Hi, I'm Dr. Joe Rogers, President and CEO of the Texas Heart Institute. And I'm joined in the studio today with a friend, Dr. Adrian Hernandez from Duke University. Dr. Hernandez is the Executive Director of the Duke Clinical Research Institute, and he's a Vice Dean in the Duke School of Medicine. And Dr. Hernandez has just given a great grand rounds at THI, sort of examining the ecosystem of clinical trials in the United States and globally, and talked a little bit about what he thinks some of the challenges are with clinical trials and what the future looks like for generating evidence through clinical trials. So Adrian, thanks very much for joining us here in the studio.
Yeah, it's been great to be back in the area.
It's great to have you back. Dr. Hernandez was a Rice undergraduate, so it's been, I'm sure, fun to sort of reconnect back to Rice. We were there this morning at a stem cell symposium.
Yeah, absolutely.
So listen, a great talk today. And I have a number of questions that I sort of wanted to just sort of pick your brain about. We talked about a number of issues, but one of the things that really continues to strike me, and you drive this home very well, is the very small number of people who actually participate in clinical trials. I think the data that you showed today was that less than 2% of people actually decide to make a commitment to a clinical trial. I just wonder if you would maybe expand on that a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about, are there certain demographics that are more or less likely to participate? And then what is your current thinking about ways to improve clinical trial enrollment?
Yeah, so on average, less than 2% of those who are eligible for a trial participate. And in part, they may not even know about it. So like it may be happening in their healthcare system or their clinic, but they may not know about it. The other part it may be completely inconvenient. We've designed studies that don't meet them where they are, and so they're not able to take off from work or be able to go and attend all the different visits there. And so I think it's both sides. Like, how do we actually make trials simpler so people can join them, and also be simpler in terms of being convenient for them, and then also making sure that people are aware of them and it's actually part of our clinical practice. And so for many places, it could be part of their clinical practice. And so that's what we're aiming to do there. I think the second thing is that in terms of just access, it may be hard for people to get access because they can't drive as long or those kind of factors. And then that causes differences in terms of who is able to participate. And so again, thinking about ways that we can reach people at their homes will make it easier and promote access to clinical trials around the U.S.
One of the things you and I talked about when we were together at Duke is the challenge of patients having multiple different disease processes. And I always have thought that the chance that someone ends up in a clinical trial is likely related to the particular physician's office you were sitting in that day, which oftentimes excludes you from other trials because you can't participate in 2 clinical trials simultaneously very often. What are you thinking now in terms of being able to say to a patient who has some heart disease with some lung disease and diabetes and maybe a neurologic condition or a malignancy, here's the variety of trials you could participate in if you're someone who wants to participate in a study?
Yeah, no, so I think, often those things should line up with, what people think is their biggest problems. What's the health problems that they have that they would actually want to help others solve through these trials. And so, as you described, many people don't just have one health problem. And so, what do they see is going to be most impactful for them or others like them is how they should think about it. And then for clinicians, I think, if we have this idea that if we have everyone able to participate, it's a pay-it-forward approach. So say someone who may be eligible for a trial in this setting, they can join. I may not be seeing that patient directly, but I can be supportive of them joining that so that they can help others learn what may be better.
Have you found anyone who's leveraging the patient portals and electronic health records well and curating a personalized list of clinical trials that a person might be a candidate to join?
There have been starts to that, and some of it's actually more facing the clinician, saying like, hey, this person may be eligible. But as you describe things, yes, you start thinking about when people are signing on for their health portals, they actually would like to learn more about their health problems, and also in some cases they may be very interested in where they can join studies that may advance health solutions. And so some places are starting to think more and more about it. the technology is available to do that. And so if you just imagine whatever Google search you have, or whether you're going on Amazon, you start getting more personalized information about things that you may be interested in. And some of our success stories have actually been using like Facebook, where we're actually helping people learn about trials there. I actually think and know it's actually better if people learn about trials through their healthcare channels, because it's a trusted source, and they also have people that can go to that knows exactly their health problem, as opposed to a generic ad.
I think it's a really great point. The other thing I'd like to just explore is you highlighted today the adaptable trial, which I think is just such an interesting study. I don't know how you feel about the question that was asked, but I think that it was such an important advance in terms of us thinking differently about ways to do clinical trials, the ways in which we use technology to engage with people. And then I think it's important, particularly for this audience, is how you reduce the cost of clinical research through that approach. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind just spending a minute taking a little deeper dive into adaptable, and maybe tell us about how you enrolled people. How often did people have to come back, for clinic visits? Because I think, as you've said, oftentimes clinical research isn't convenient for patients, and it's a deterrent from their participation. So maybe if you wouldn't mind.
So adaptable randomized 15,000 people across 40 sites in the U.S. And for a typical cardiovascular outcome trial for 15,000, that typically would be 400 sites in 40 countries. And so you can just see that there's a magnitude of difference when you can do things through healthcare channels and do things that take advantage of electronic health records. The second thing is actually the first patient literally randomized at home with a glass of wine by his side. He hadn't drank it, so he was informed, just to be clear. But he actually joined it, because it was quite convenient. He was able to do it in that way, and so we're reaching people at their home. Now, those kind of settings, obviously, it works in certain aspects. Aspirin over-the-counter trial is an easier thing to do, say, than other types of therapies. But all the different components can actually be fit into hybrid trials, where certain things have to happen in the clinic or in the hospital, and then all other aspects could be done at home or conveniently through other channels. And so doing that, and then if you start thinking about the cost, overall for a 15,000 patient study, it was about a total of $20 million. If you were to take that and use the old model, you can add a few zeros to that.
I think it's a remarkable advance in the way we have done clinical trials. Do you project that we'll be doing more trials like that with new drugs and other therapies?
Yeah, so as people need better evidence for new drugs, they certainly will get their first indication, and that may be more of a traditional model. But even there, we're seeing things that change, where there are hybrid approaches there. And then certainly if they have expanded indications, then you shouldn't do the $1 billion trial or $500 million trial the first time and repeat it for the second indication and third. It should get exponentially easier and better. And if you just think about some of the drugs, say for heart failure, they actually started off in diabetes, but actually they almost cost the same when they got to heart failure, as opposed to the first indication for diabetes.
One of the things that I've really enjoyed about watching you shape the clinical trial ecosystem is your commitment to the patient as a partner. And I was really struck today during Grand Rounds that actually you had a patient present some of the results of the trial at a national meeting, which is sort of a stunning advance. But I think you've been a real advocate for making sure that patients who commit themselves to a clinical study actually hear about the results. Or that, and something else I think that you've done, which is really remarkable, is engage patients to join steering committees and help define endpoints that are meaningful to them. I wonder if you just wouldn't mind highlighting some of your most current thinking on how we engage the patients that we're trying to serve in a clinical trial and integrate them into sort of the planning and operational phases of a study.
Yeah, no, it's been terrific. I mean, they certainly keep things interesting. They will keep us honest. They ask the most obvious questions, and you're like, wow, okay, we really shouldn't have it like that. So let's unwind things a bit. And so that's been really terrific. And we've actually incorporated patients into data safety and monitoring boards now. And so I'll just say that was like a little bit of a leap of faith where, like, hey, they're going to be in a closed group making a decision around safety and continuation of a study with others. And that was actually kind of a remarkable experience of getting even across in that area. And so now we're starting to integrate these approaches and experiences more directly across the spectrum. And then I think at the end of the day, when we have results, I mean, what better, more authentic approach from a patient with a lived experience saying, here are the results, and I'm like you, so you should think about it in this way.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about whether or not you can leverage patients who participate in clinical trials to increase the enthusiasm and the participation a little bit more globally.
Yeah, no, it's been terrific. And I think the other thing is that when we've also encountered, I'll just say, administration issues, say for a consent process, and we've had that experience that we worked through this with a patient panel to get where we are, that helps really provide credibility in terms of we're saying that, yes, this process is much more engaging, much more understandable for the everyday person than someone or a committee that may be at a bit of a distance from it.
Listen, again, I'm so appreciative that you could come down and spend the day and give a great grand rounds. I think everybody that was there enjoyed it. And on behalf of the Texas Heart Institute, I'd like to thank you for joining us today.